So my name is Tori Hartman, and for those of you, I'm just curious, for those of you in terms of what called you here today, I just am curious, how many of you have heard of the Chakra Wisdom cards? Like you either have a deck or you've heard of it. Okay, quite a few of you. So one or two just kind of wandered over and said, who's this? And just curious. Okay, so what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the cards, a little bit of history maybe you don't know, because, you know, a deck never just comes into being. I mean, it just doesn't just appear. It kind of comes from somewhere. And I think one of the most fascinating things, at least for me, is when things have history behind them. I love finding out about the history and the story of how things really came into being. And I think we find when we get to the history of something, we really understand it at a whole different level. And that's kind of what my story, why I think the story is important and why I want to share it with you. So the first thing I want to say is that when I had a near-death experience, which was I was in my early 20s, and I literally died, went to the light, as everybody talks about. And when I came back, I'd always been very intuitive. I just want to say I'd always been somewhat psychic. And when I came back, I had these angels talking to me. And it really made me mad because they were very, inopportune times. Someone would touch me and I'd tell them something and I'd say, oh, I didn't want to do that. And what happened was, though, I prayed and I said, please come to me in the way that my gift is here, you know, as an orator, as a writer. And they started coming. The angels started coming, and they literally dictated to me these stories that I wrote down. And I just thought they were kind of foolish. And I thought they were in the way of what I was supposed to be doing. So I took these fables and I shoved them in drawers. And they wouldn't go away, by the way, the angels wouldn't go away until I wrote these fables down. Once I wrote the fable down, it was complete, and I was like, okay, whew, that's done. And in all that time, it was about a 5-year period, I moved to California from New York. And when I got to California, I started these groups, these mastermind groups, and they were kind of like groups with artists, you know, of like, what can we talk about to move our career forward? And slowly but surely, I started pulling these fables out one night because somebody had an issue and we couldn't quite resolve it, and I was looking for paper, and there was a fable, and I said, oh, I have these fables. And somebody said, what is that? And I said, well, this is and I told them the story, and they said, well, let's read one. I said, okay, so we read one, and that began the reading of the fables. And they started to become group exercises. They started to become journal activities. The whole manuscript developed. And I found an artist on the internet, and I said, can you draw this for me? I have the manuscript. And she said, yeah, I can draw it. It'll take me a year. And I said, well, I've been with it 15 or 20, so what difference does it make? So it took her a year. And every week in my inbox, this beautiful little image appeared. And I said, these are perfect. I mean, I think there was one or two that I felt was kind of off, and she shifted the color, but that was it. And at the end of the process, she was the only time we ever spoke, by the way, in person. She called me up and she said, you know, Tori, I think there's another card to draw. And I said, I don't feel that, Gretchen. I feel like there's another angel, but I don't feel a fable or card. And during that time, I'd ran into somebody who was a big publisher in New York, and he said, you got to self-publish this. Nobody's going to get this. And I said, okay. So I self-published it. I spent my life savings at the time, $100,000. I went to China, published it, and I came back, and I was so excited when the decks arrived on my... Okay, so 10,000 decks can be a store, just to give you the idea. So I had these pallets lining my driveway, lining the sidewalk, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with these? So after I figured out storage, I also figured out that Amazon was going to charge me $1 per unit to sell it on top of what I was paying. So I was actually going to lose money to sell it. And so I sat down and I said, listen, I haven't been brought this far with this to drop it. I know there's something magical here. What do I do? And something said, give it away free. So I put it online, and people started trying the shuffler, and people were emailing me and saying, can I buy this somewhere? And I said, sure. So I put a cart up, and it started selling. And in about just under 3 years, I sold all 10,000 decks. And then I said, it's time to find a publisher because I want to work with a team. I didn't want to be alone anymore. It was time for me to work with a team that was going to get that something important was happening here. Now, I trained people had this deck, and something said, go to London, because it's happening in London. I know it's in London. So I got over here for the book fair, and everybody in America said to me, "Don't go to the London Book Fair. They only buy foreign rights." And I said, "Perfect, I'm foreign. This is going to be great." So I get over here, and my first meeting is with Jo Lal. She had just become publisher at Watkins, and I just knew the minute I met her. I said, "This person she just has a vision, and she is just an amazing, amazing visionary." And she sat down with me. At the time it was Color Wisdom Cards, and she said, first thing she said was, "Well, do you mind if we change the name to Chakra Wisdom?" And I said, "This is scary because you're reading my mind. I'm supposed to be the psychic. What's going on here?" But it was perfect. And I said, "Absolutely." And because I'd been teaching it through the chakra, I'd been teaching it as the 7th chakra. And what I noticed in these cards is that every chakra, when you're reading these cards, and I'll talk about this a little bit, because what I want to give you in the last 10 minutes, because I think it's important to give you the foundation, is I want to talk to you about the toolkit tonight a little bit, because if you're a card reader, you also want to go deeper into it. You want to find out what the two are. What we did was we were publishing this, and all my friends were saying to me, "I can't believe they're cutting the fable." I mean, and I said, "Well, they're making it a legend." It was a full fable, right? And they made it a legend. And they said, "But why are they cutting it down, the fable?" And I said, "It's all going to be perfect. People who get the deck will enjoy it because it's what it's supposed to be, right?" See, because when you hand something off, when something comes to you as a gift, you have to bring your community together to make it happen. It's always the way it happens, and things shift. Your song's going to change. If you're a songwriter, your painting will shift, and things get, because the lighting changes. Everything shifts based on who you're collaborating with. So my favorite story is that I have to tell you, when the deck was coming out, and Jo said to me, "Well, tell me more about the fables." And I said, "Well, Jo, I think you really need to talk to Becky." Becky was one of my practitioners, and she said, "Well, I'll talk to Becky about how she learned the cards," because I couldn't explain it. How do you learn to read? I was like, because I know I teach it, but so she called Becky, and Becky and she are talking, and Jo says to Becky, "So Becky, how did you really learn the cards?" And Becky said, "Oh, well, you got to study the fables." And Jo went, "Really? Bring. Hello, Tori, do you want to do the toolkit?" Because we need to put the fables together. So that's how the toolkit came about. But what I want to share with you before I move into the toolkit is that I want to let you all know that whether you're listening on video or you're sitting here right now with us, I want you to know the magic has started. See, when you gather in this kind of situation, there's an energy that shifts. Because you've already understood, as I said to you, something comes together in a collaboration, and we're all right now in this energetic collaboration. So what I want to tell you is 6 months after I put the cards online free, and people were using them and they started selling, I got a call from Gretchen's husband, and Gretchen is the one who drew the cards. Gretchen died. She died 6 months after the cards came out. And I realized that she was the final angel. It wasn't that there was another card. She was supposed to be the angel. And what really comes forward to me, every time I touch this deck, every time I work with it, I realize that she's an artist that did not die with her music in her. She did not die with that last piece that needed to be done. She actually left us this great legacy. And so one of the things I really believe about this deck is part of the reason that I think it's caught on its own. I mean, we all saw this thing. I mean, it came out, and a lot of people said, "Go buy my book right now," and it becomes a bestseller. The cards have continued to sell, and they've just sold and sold and sold. And I think it has a lot to do with the soul that Gretchen left us, the spirit of that energy of an artist who left us a legacy. And so what I think this work is about, if I have to give you the general overview, I've come to understand that there's 2 legacies in our life. There's the one we're left and the one we're going to leave. And we have to absolutely embrace the one we're left, which is where I think when we get into the 6th chakra, and I've worked with this more and more and more as I've started to work with the concepts around life purpose divination, and I'll talk a little bit about that too. The idea that when people have studied the chakra, we had, and as I mentioned, we had fable teams, right? it was fascinating. One of the fables, the joy card, right, is that there's an exercise in here. Don't worry, I'm going to talk about legacy in a moment. But I do this on purpose. I don't go in order because I don't want you to follow me. I want you to be in the experience of the story. See, if you know that you're having an experience, you're going to be with me rather than just, oh, this is a lecture. I'm not lecturing you. I'm sharing with you a journey that can be yours or not. There might be aspects of this that you follow, and that's the brilliance of it. So even if I forget something, it's all perfect, right? Because that's what we're doing together. We're all creating something. So when I talk about the Chakra Wisdom Toolkit, we were doing one night, it was the Joy card. And in the Joy card, there's an exercise. And so I'm sharing this with you about the toolkit because one of the things that happens with the toolkit, just to tell you all, is that it has the picture of the card, so you'll have the image of the fable, and there's a message of the week and then my tip about that particular card. Then you'll have the fable, and you'll read the full fable. And what happens after that is that every day, the first day, of course, is the full fable, and every day, like the color reflection is Tuesday. Wednesday is a journal journey, if you decide to journal deeper. And finally, the one that I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight, there's obviously the meditation, because there's always a meditation, but the one that really always strikes me is the making a connection. And in there, it's with yourself or others. You can do a solo exercise or a group exercise. And one of the group exercises is the Joy card. And one night we're doing that in the group, and one of the women, the exercise is this. You talk to your partner, and it's a game, and the exercise is you've just been invited on your favorite talk show. So, of course, everybody in the room picked Oprah except for one person. And she said, can I win an Academy Award instead? I went, yeah, that's fine. So her choice was to get up and accept her Academy Award. Everybody else had an interview with Oprah. And I have to tell you, it's fascinating how you change. You know, go from, yeah, I'm interested in drawing something, and somebody's like on Oprah. Hi, Oprah. Yes, I'm really excited about my new art. And it's really fascinating how people just come to life when you're in it, right? When you're really in it. So this one woman accepted her Academy Award, and it was an animated short. She was very excited about it. And I have to tell you, 7 years later, when we saw her accept her Academy Award, it was almost the identical speech. So some of the things that started to happen in this group of people really stepping into the possibility. Oh, thank you. Why do people call me when I'm talking? Can I tell you that always happens to me? It's like, hi, I'm on stage. Yeah, I can't really talk right now. Can you see like it being in the middle of something? Hold on, everybody, I gotta take this call. What? Okay. So anyway, the idea of the work, the group activities is to expand your consciousness. And so one of the things that people miss in the toolkit is the idea that this was all developed from a group. And one of the things that begins to happen is that as you start to do this work, automatically you start to learn to read the cards, because the cards become a part of your journey. So what I want to say is there is, and then I'll do questions in just a moment, but a couple things I want to say is that there are 49 fables, and of course 52 weeks in the year. So there's an intro week, there's a middle week where I talk about the segue between the first 3 chakra into the higher chakra. Because you see, we actually only create and bring to earth in our first chakra. So basically, in this book and in the card deck itself, what you're going to find is that the first chakra, that's your foundation. That's what you're bringing in from the earth, really, and your very DNA. So when we're looking at first chakra issues and the red cards come up, those are really about what are you creating right now. And one of the things I really enjoy when I'm doing readings with this deck is I really enjoy the idea of, I do a lot of 4-card spreads, and they're in the back of the book. So you can do for wealth, which is well-being, right? Then you could do one for love if you want. The one that I think is most popular actually is my intention authentic? And it's fascinating because I had one woman who did the spread, and she said, well, I really want to be in a relationship. And I pulled these cards, and we were looking at them, and one of the cards just, forgive me because I don't remember in this moment, but it was just, I said, are you sure you want to be in a relationship? Are you sure you're not just saying that? And she went, oh yeah, I am just saying that because everybody else is in a relationship. I really want to finish school right now. And I was like, Okay. But the clarity that comes from that of like, are you sure? Are you sure you want that? Yeah, I do. Okay. Then let's find a way to get you there. See, I think that's the thing I like, is that when you know what you want, then we can guide you to that. You know, it's real. I was telling Vicki before, Vicki works with Watkins, and I was just saying to her before that, you know, the thing with readings is sometimes I'll have people come to me, and I was doing a radio show, and a woman got on and said, does he love me? And she just sounded like she was in so much pain. And I said to her, who cares? You sound miserable. And you know, she got it. She suddenly got it, that it didn't matter. You know, she was experiencing that level of misery in her life. So it didn't matter what that other person felt or didn't feel. So I think what I'm trying to say is that let's look at, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the chakra. Then I'll maybe pull a card or two. And then we will, I'll go into any questions you have and tell you a little bit about what I'm working on and what we're doing at Watkins and what's coming up next. So, couple of things that that I want to say. When we look at the 7 chakra, I define the chakra a little bit differently in terms of, I believe it's an evolutionary conversation. I don't think it's in, last year when I was here, I had the chart, you know, they sell the chakra charts here, which are great. And there's the chart of the 7 chakra, right? So we have the root chakra. And I have to tell you, if you are an expert or you know the chakra at all, you can bring all that wisdom. If you know Reiki, all of that can come into this. It's not something that like, oh, this is how I'm going to teach it and you have to learn it. What you know and your brilliance is coming in here. First chakra is your foundation. The second chakra becomes your emotional immaturity or maturity. And one of the biggest things I have to say is that when we're hysterical, it's historical. So if there's any kind of hysteria going on, it's directly related to the first chakra, because that means that what's coming up from the root, okay? Now, follow me and don't follow me. So it's all important that you understand energetically more than here, okay? And then I'm going to give you the new equation of working with yourself energetically with all of this. And you're going to learn it because you're in the class right now. So, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But, okay. So when you get to the second chakra, you're really talking about how you're dealing emotionally in the world. So all of the orange cards in the chakra wisdom deck are all about your emotion, you're relating to things emotionally. How do you relate emotionally to service? So everything in this deck is really about how we relate to the issue is the issue, right? So what we're really looking at here is how do you deal with endings and completion? How are you relating to that? A lot of people look at this and be very sad, but what I say is what opposes exposes. So this is about fulfilling something, fulfilling a legacy, something powerful, carrying a tradition on. So it doesn't have to be just, what's an ending? So I think when we look at something from a level of emotional maturity, that card takes on a whole different meaning. Then when we look at our third chakra from the second chakra of emotion, we go into how are we thinking about it. And by the way, most breakdowns always occur between the second and third chakra. Why? Because we get a thought, uh-oh, I can't do that. You know, it's like if you've ever been skiing, like I ski, okay? So sometimes you're skiing and you're going, wow, I'm doing so great. Oh my gosh, I'm pretty high up. Oh no, I'm gonna have to hit that peak right there. Boom, I'm wiped out. But if I'm not in there, if I'm in the spirit of it and I'm not thinking, if my mind is just not there, if I'm just energetically there, I can go, and that's the difference. So when you get to that second chakra, your breakdown is almost always going to happen in the third chakra. So it almost always happens in your thinking, right? That's the old cliche of, you know, your mind is like a bad neighborhood, don't go in there alone, right? So when we get to that third chakra, that's where you make decisions and make plans. I had a woman come up to me last year at Mind, Body, Spirit. She said, you know, my big bloke, she's standing next to her husband, who's a big guy, and she says, he's got a blocked third chakra. And I looked at him and I said, so do you have a blocked third chakra? And he said, I don't know. She tells me I do. You know, and I'm like, okay. I said, are you working on a business? Is there some kind of planning you're thinking of? You're creating a new business? He said, how'd you know? And I said, well, often when we're planning something or we're in a new business or we're trying to figure something out, it can occur like a block because that chakra's on fire. It's working. It's working, working. Now, when people say to me, I have a blocked heart chakra, I almost always look to the prior one. It's almost never in the chakra you think it's in because it's the chakra that's not supporting it prior. So when I'm reading cards for somebody, especially these cards, and I pull up a lot of green, for instance, the Penelope and Pickle is the grief card. I still call it by the old fable name, so I'll interchange the two. But the grief card says, grief is love without a place to go. And it's actually quite a lovely card because it helps us understand that we've loved to such a degree that we get to have that experience. So it is that capacity to love that gets expanded in that wisdom. So when we get to the green, and something I want to say that I talk about in the course I'm teaching, Life Purpose Divination, is that when you get to the green chakra, by the time you're working with the chakra and you get to that green chakra, you know in the autumn how we look down a mountain and we see red, yellow, and orange leaves? That's kind of like standing at the top of the mountain and looking down at what we've created and what has come. So once we get to the heart cards say, is your heart in it? Is this really what you want? Are you going to open or close your heart to something? The next chakra, the fifth chakra, blue, it's the only manifesting chakra, by the way. And this to me is really interesting. I said this I was teaching last year for alternatives, and I said, we only create in our fifth chakra. And somebody went, what? And she was horrified. She went, but what if I have a blocked fifth chakra? And I said, well, what if you do? She said, then I'm not creating anything. I said, I'm sure you're creating something. Let's just figure out what you're creating, and then we can change it if you want to. And she went, oh, okay, thank goodness. She sat down. She was just fine. So, but what happened was, it was very interesting. By the end of the day, I said, well, how do you define your fifth chakra? She said, well, through my voice. And she was like this all day. She wasn't feeling well. She was just like in upset. And by the end of the day, I said, she said, well, how am I going to change this manifesting thing? And I said, how do you define the fifth chakra for you? And she said, voice. And I said, your voice, really? And meanwhile, she'd been whining and like really crying all day. And she went, oh, I get it. And she got it. And I like to say if one person's left behind, no one gets it. But when she got it, it was like the ripcord. Everybody in the room got it. So what I want to say about the fifth chakra, I'm going to show you how it works really quick. You know how when you go in, let's say Tesco, right? You walk in Tesco and you're standing there, and there's one angry till person, you know, the clerk behind there, and they're really angry. Can you tell that they're having a bad day just by looking at them? You know what I mean. We've all had it. And that's fifth chakra at work. That's energy being sent out, even if it's an extreme example, right? However, what you create in your life, if you really want to know how you're manifesting, how it's going, look at what you've created. Look at the car you drive, where you work, if you have a car, if you decide to take the tube, do you live in a flat? What floor are you on? How many children do you have? How big is your home or not? Look at what you've already created and look at it and go, whoa, I'm a good creator. And once you realize you've created it, then you can change it and you can let it go. You know, I live in a beautiful home in California, and I said, a couple months ago, I said, I'm ready to move. I'm ready to go. I'm going to move to North Carolina. I'm going to move to Asheville, and I'm going to live in the mountains. And everybody said, like, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. They said, why are you moving? I said, because. And they were like, that's not a reason. But remember when we were little? Remember when we were little and we'd say, why are you doing that? Because. That's how I feel. And you know what? Michelle Knight said this to me. She's a very good friend of mine. She's a wonderful astrologer. I don't know if you know who she is. She lives here in the UK. And she said to me, Tori, if we're not the people that are ready to change our lives like this, then how could we have no business teaching anybody else how to do it? And I thought, that's true. That's true. So I'm walking away from my beautiful, beautiful home because I'm going to bless somebody else with it, and I'm going to move to a new adventure, right? And Eleanor Roosevelt said it about life purpose. She said, the wonderful thing you can do is jump off and take another risk and just be ready for the next one. Because somebody said to me yesterday, how do I get inspired? I said, find things that inspire you and do them. And I know that sounds trite, and I don't mean to sound trite to any of you, believe me. So I'm going to wrap up by saying, the sixth chakra is your sixth sense. It's your legacy chakra. Every card in Chakra Wisdom is all about, in the sixth chakra, is all about your family of origin. It's all going to be like, oh my gosh, and it's also where multi-generational healing resides. So when I do spreads, and in the course I'm teaching right now, in the sixth module, I do a lot on legacy. Because one of the things that I think is vital is to know the gifts you were given. See, if you know your heritage and the gifts you've been given, even, listen, we've all had shite too, okay? I'm not going to lie to any of you. We've all had our issues, all right? But it wasn't until I realized, and this was such a strange thing, and this story, and okay, one other thing. I want to tell you this. It wasn't until I realized my grandfather, who is a linguist, spoke 13 languages. He's from Hungary. I never met him. He died way before I was born. But he came to America, and he would go to the courts, and he would interpret for the immigrants who couldn't speak English, and they were literally railroaded into prison, right? And he would interpret for them, and he would help them, get out because they realized that they didn't speak the language. And then I realized that the gift, because it always skips a generation, by the way, my gift as an interpreter was I interpret spiritual messages. So we all get our gifts and our challenges from our grandparents. We are here to heal the wounds of our grandparents, not our parents. Our parents may scar us a little bit, but that's their job. But it's the grandparents that really become important. And so when we look at the sixth chakra cards, they become very important in the legacy section. And then we look at the seventh chakra, and those are universal ideas. The highest calling of ourselves will always show up in the seventh chakra. In Chakra Wisdom, all of the purple card are sixth chakra, and the seventh are all neutral because it's the seventh chakra. So that's kind of my overview of the card deck, and a little bit of a sneak peek into the toolkit. And what I want to say to you is that one of the best ways I think to work with the toolkit and even with the cards is I loved it when I had a couple friends over and we talked about goals and dreams. And I promised I'd tell you the equation, so I am going to tell you the new equation, which is this. In the old paradigm, it was our brain plus our intuition equaled pursuing our dreams. The new paradigm is your intuition minus your brain is living your purpose. And the real question becomes, how do I drop my brain out? And that is what a huge part of my work is right now, is teaching you to say, okay, my brain is on. How do I know the difference? And I'm going to give you one quick thing. You'll always know when your brain is on if you use a buzzword for something. Oh, well, I'm depressed, or I feel abandoned. There's a buzzword on. And the buzzword is your brain putting a stamp on something to hide what's really going on underneath. So, that's just a little bird's eye view into it. But that is primarily what the cards and the book are, and I am happy to answer questions for any of you. Or what I'm getting in this conversation is that where the tarot come from, or is it
your interpretation?
My interpretation of the tarot, you mean? Or well, I'm glad you're bringing up tarot, because Chakra Wisdom is not tarot. It's no, it's totally fine, because tarot is actually a very specific type of deck, and I actually learned the tarot first, so I do understand it. And there are a lot of beliefs about its origin. You know, some people believe it came from the Far East. Some people, I mean, they don't really know where it actually came from. There's roots that are far-reaching. And different scholars will argue different things, but since I'm not a scholar in that area, I can tell you what I know of it, which is that in the tarot, there's two decks. You have your minor arcana, which is more of your day-to-day issues. My deck's an oracle deck, so it's all original and there are no tarot cards in that deck. So the idea is that a tarot card deck, much like our modern playing deck, our modern deck has 52 cards. In the tarot, it goes page, knight, queen, king. And the page gets dropped out in the modern playing card deck because the page actually is the spiritual messenger of the deck. And that got pulled out of the playing cards. So you just have Jack, Queen, King in the tarot. Now you have the day-to-day cards that tell you more about issues like the aces are gifts from God, right? So you'll know based on and numerology's tied in as well. There are a lot of things tied into these ancient teachings. And the thing to keep in mind, that for me at least, the fool's journey of every deck is what is going to separate out the decks. There's got to be at least 1,000 decks of tarot. I mean, so many people have done them. But the Fool's Journey is the 0 card going to the 21, which is the world. And it's actually also in increments, which I think is very interesting, of darkness, dawn, and light. There's actually the 7, 7, and 7, with the Fool being the first one, because the Fool is actually taking the journey, right? So you have the Fool here, and then you've got the Fool, who they meet, who they're becoming, and then who they become. So each of that, and that is a book in itself, just the major arcana. The majors are more destiny cards. So when we look at tarot, and you can look at many different decks, I think the key to a deck, at least for me, is the one that calls to you is going to be the one that speaks to you. And everybody has their own feeling about it. Now, when you look at my deck or you look at decks like it, like Doreen Virtue's decks, a lot of those decks are more, now she also has some tarot decks, but a lot of them are more angel decks, and they're called oracles because the wisdom that comes through those decks are not of tarot. They're a different type of wisdom, and they're based on something other than tarot. But you are correct in that tarot is a very, I actually think, this is just my own thinking, I enjoy using tarot when I'm reading, just if I want to know future, if I want to know things that are going on, I read for other people with them. But I don't do as much of that anymore because as a psychic, I feel my job is to make my job obsolete. I really am here to empower other people to do the work for themselves because I think we all have it. I think we can all do it. I think we choose where to use it. And I don't think it's some privilege, that I have. I think it's just that it's like that's where I focused my study. I mean, if you had focused it there, you'd have that too. It's that thing. And I think the hard part for most of us is that when we start down a journey of study, most of us will go, this was a great question, and basically, so I'll cover a little bit about the practical aspects of the deck and how to use the spreads in the back, and also some thoughts about how it works with your intuition, how to develop it. When I'm teaching people to work with the deck, the first thing I actually do is I will have them come up with a word or phrase, and then I'll give them the question they answered, so that you can kind of go, and then you pull a card and you put it with it, and you start to go, ooh, that's interesting. So you start to put the pieces together. But let's look at the layers that you're talking about. So the first thing is, may I pull a card for you? Sure. All right. So one of the things that that happens when you have when you pull a card is, and I always like to ask permission because I don't like to just pull a card for some. I'm not one of those people that walk up to you in a supermarket and tell you, your aunt wants to talk to you. No, she might, but I'm not gonna. It's like I'm not gonna do that. Okay. So I'm a fidgeter, so just get ready. So it's interesting, facade has come up a couple times today, and I had a woman yesterday in the class I taught, and she said, I don't want that card. I said, why not? She said, I don't like the picture, I don't want that card. I said, just wait. She came up after, she said, it was perfect. So, all right. So the facade card is in the yellow chakra, so it is your solar plexus, and it's telling me that you're really in a place in your life where you're reclaiming your journey. So, and I'm going to tell you all how I got there in a second, but this gentleman is reclaiming his journey. He's bringing back together into your life, if you will, your inner child, so to speak, but you're You're really living from that place of your authenticity. And also the other thing is you're not doing for other people anymore what has been draining you for years. Because it's time for you to start thinking for yourself, and you know this. Does this make any sense to you?
Absolutely.
Okay. So how did I get that from one card? I go back to I studied the fable. And in the fable, Dariah, the older gentleman in the card, has spent his life taking care of everyone. His father died when he was young, and he had 3 sisters. And he helped them become what they could be, and he became a shell because he never got to be a child. And then when he grew up, he had his own family, and he wasn't present for it. And then at the end of his life, he goes to the one place he hadn't really gone. He goes to the park. And he sees this little child hiding behind the tree, and it's his inner child. And he takes the little inner child by the hand, and he reclaims himself. So what this fable reminds me of is it's never too late for us to reclaim our life and step into who we are going to be. Now, when we look at it as an aspect of our intellect, right? Because remember I said that all of the fables have some aspect of our chakra. So when we look at the 3rd chakra of creativity, so now what I'm doing is I'm looking at the other layers, right? I'm looking at the yellow, which is creativity, our instinct, gut instinct. And your instinct is firing to reclaim yourself. And so it's telling you that you're on the right path, you're doing the right things. Now, what I would do if I was going to pull another card for this gentleman, which I'm going to do because I'm me and because we're in front of an audience, is I'm going to pull a second card for you. Remember I said the blue cards, the 5th chakra, is the only place you manifest from. And what is that word? Impatience? And remember what I said about what opposes exposes? So it's not that you're impatient. It's that you are impatient, but it's telling you it's coming. Wait a little longer. Because the young boy in the fable is named Aton. And Aton goes and he buys a used moon because he really wants a moon in his sky. Okay, he just can't wait for the moon to come out. So he goes and he gets this used moon, and he puts the moon in the sky, and it has a string on it. And so he doesn't realize this because the moon lights up, it's beautiful, and he sits down and he's looking at the moon and really enjoying it, and then he just lets go of the string and it goes off. He says, oh. So he realizes the moon will only stay on if he's holding it. And then in here, the great servant, the great spirit, comes to him and says, it's okay to let go. The sun's going to come up. And what happens is he realizes that he's on his path, that he doesn't have to force anything. So this is about really accepting that you're in the right vein. Now, how did I get there? Okay. We look at the name on the card and we realize what opposes exposes. So we know that facade is about authenticity, really. And we know that impatience is more than patience. It's about understanding that things are in process for you because it's a blue card. See? So what I often do with people when I'm working with them is I'll say, go look it up in the dictionary. You'll be very surprised when you look up a word in the dictionary how the meaning starts to get deeper and deeper. And one of the things I want to share with you is that as we get in the back and how they came to be, and then I will, layouts. Okay, so there's a bunch of layouts, and I don't know who put the type that small because I can't see it, but I'll pretend that I can, okay? So, because I kind of know what's in the book a little. But one of the things that I think is important is that, and it says here, what's revealed can be healed. And I think that's one of the most important concepts of the Chakra Wisdom cards, is that anything we can see can heal us. And I think one of the best things I heard when I was working with somebody on a spread, it was a reporter, and she said to me, you know, this is like a lesson without a lecture. So it reflects to you what's going on gently. And you get to see it. I don't have to say anything, which is what I like. I like when people get it themselves because it's the difference between learning to fish and me buying you dinner, you know? And what happens is you really get to learn how to do this for yourself. So just to share with you, there's a bunch of them in here, but the purpose of your intention. You know, why are you creating something? And let me tell you something. the places where the cards fall is just as much, that is as valuable as the card itself. Sometimes it's more important, because I did this in one of my classes. I switched the cards and I said, look how different it is. And they went, it's a completely different reading. One of the techniques I want to give you all tonight too is when you're working with cards, and it can be my deck, and it can be any deck, it's a little decophile idea. Look at a card, okay? If you're reading for a friend, like read for each other, and write down 3 words that are coming to you based on that card. And if we had time tonight, I'd have her, this is what I would do as an exercise so that you kind of get a sense of the deck. So you write down the 3 words for that card. And then what's really interesting is when you do the reading with somebody, you tell the story based on those 3 words. So you create the story. I can't tell you how many times, I mean, I'm getting truth bumps as I tell you this. I can't tell you how many times people have done that and they go, oh my gosh, and it's actually, that's what's in the book. Like I found, it's right here. I hired a young man once to work with me, and there's a story about this young man and his grandfather having cool lemonade. And this young man, his name was Greg, and he had a grandfather he was living with, and they had just had lemonade that afternoon. So he came into work the next day, this was the next day, and he's reading the fable, and he said, this is me and my grandfather. And I said, oh, how fun. He went out for lunch and didn't come back. He was too scared. So he was like, everybody said, what happened to Greg? I said, he read a fable. So, but what I want to say is that, so when we look at the intentions, and this is important, the difference between this deck and like, you know, a goal and an intention, let me define that for you. A goal is always who you become in the process. When you have a goal, my goal to become a doctor, I'm going to become a doctor at the end when I go through med school and I do my internship and all of that, right? I become a doctor. Well, an intention is I intend to be this person. I intend to be someone who is delivering an important message, or I intend, and that intention, it is more powerful than a goal. But a goal is vital too. So it's not that there's, you know, it's not one is better than the other, but that's why these are called intention spreads. Because if I know what you intend to do, just like if the deck knows what you really want, it can work through you. And remember, how we relate to the issue is the issue. It's never about dishes being in the sink because someone left them. It's, the dishes are in the sink, right? It's how we're relating to it. So what I want to say is that there's basically the purpose of your intention for wealth, removing blocks. That's a very big one. Now, I really believe that blocks are your intuition trying to speak to you. So when you hit a block, it's almost always like that moment when your brain is trying to shut something down, because your brain is designed to protect you. Your brain says, oh, no, 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 don't do that. You're going to get hurt. Right? But your intention is like, you know, your instinct is like, yeah, I'm jumping off that ledge and I'm going to jump in the water. And your brain goes, it's kind of stupid, you know? So your brain is always trying to protect you. So that's why I really don't believe in blocks, actually. I believe that's your intention trying to talk to you. Your intuition is trying to speak. So when it says removing blocks, it's actually removing everything that your brain is putting up to your intuition. So I don't know if I answered that, but those are a couple ideas. And then what I like to do as well is, like I said, I have the group dynamic. So I love upside down. I do that all the time. I'll go, and this is, oh, wow, okay. So the group dynamic is really fab too. And I think if I were starting today with this, if it were me, it's funny because I met with a reporter the other day and I said I would start with the toolkit, because you get to know yourself and the fables, and then when you start to pull the cards, they start to really come to life for you. Because I think it's more important that you form a relationship. So, and Vicki was telling me she pulls a card a day, or every couple days. Okay, oh, every couple days. So yeah, so that means every couple days she'll pull a single card, and I think you can read a single card. I'm much more the person that, like, I like to lay out 4 cards because I like to tell a story. You can tell I'm a storyteller. So I like the story. And I'm going to wrap up this part before I move on to another question with, I think the biggest thing about this deck is that you get to you find your greatest gift through your wounding. And when I was little, from the time I was 5 till I was about 15, my mother told me I had no command of the language. 5, of course, Mom, And she literally would dictate my school papers to me. And I had to turn them in word for word or she would go into upsets. So I just, all right, I wrote them down, right? Do you know it wasn't until after Watkins published this and I was literally working on the course Life Purpose Divination, which has been kicking my arse, because when you're in it, people say to me, how do you detach from this work? I go, oh, if you want to detach, be an accountant. Don't do spiritual work. If you want to be detached from it, you're in the wrong business, because you're constantly evolving or you're not authentic, right? So I was sitting there in bed and I was like having a freak out moment, and I sat up and I realized that when the angels came to me, I was taking dictation. My mother died when I was 15. I failed English in high school because I never wrote anything, and I had to work triply hard to be a writer, right? I realized the angels came to me because of my wounding. I was uniquely qualified to take dictation. But you see, until we use our wounding as our gift, we don't know what's ahead yet. So, I have friends, when I look at some of these things that are going on and all, there's one important thing I want to share, and that is it's political right now with Bruce Jenner coming out. Somebody said to me, well, he's 65. Why is he doing it now? And I said, you know why? Because there's plenty of 20-year-olds who aren't able to live their life. And this is someone saying, no, I'm not dying with my music in me. I'm not dying without expressing who I really am. That is so important, and that to me is what this work is about. See, I think it's about you, not me. This stuff, when I see people changing in front of me, I'm like, wow. Like, somebody said to me, they said, so tell me about the fable Reggie Rust, Impasse. I said, I don't know what to tell you. What do you want to know? And Becky was with me, she was my practitioner, and I said, yeah, Becky, tell them about it, because I was drawing a blank on the card, and she said, well, Reggie's a guardian angel. I said, where'd you get that from? She said, well, it's an impasse. He's protecting people from danger. And I went, oh, that's brilliant. See, because you are bringing to it your magic. So how does it get interpreted? By your life experience, not mine. There are 2 gay cards in this deck. I don't have the gay experience. But I'll tell you what, it's not that they're gay, it's that they just had this experience. In one, grass is about growth. He stands up for himself, and the story is just through his life. And in the rejection card, it's one of the most powerful cards in the deck, because we learn that we don't get rejected, we decide to be rejected. We decide we don't want something, and then we create the circumstance around it, and that's painful to realize. But it's a brilliant, brilliant fable. It's a brilliant card. So when people, like the other day, somebody was reading this and they went, where'd you get these fables? I said, I bought them at a street corner. Come on. It's like a friend of mine was like, I've known her for years. She's like, where'd you get these? I go, it's like your own friends don't know what you do, okay? That's how it always works. I hope I answered your question a little bit, but I think as you get deeper and deeper into what works for you, that's how it works. So I'm going to be here for a few more minutes. I really would love to answer more questions. We're going to kind of wrap it up so people can